Hi there guys, it's Ebird Online here, and I thought I'd just bring you an update from 90 Day Fiance. So today I posted a review for episode 3 regarding Robert and Annie, and no sooner had I posted it than all my fabulous subscribers started calling my attention to Robert and his shady ways. So I decided to drop an extra video this week on Robert's 9 lies. So Robert has always seemed like a rather shifty character to me, and everything that I've heard and seen today absolutely confirms this. So it's my opinion that Robert is of limited intelligence. That's obvious for all to see. He's made false promises, and Robert has lured girlfriend Annie away from the Dominican Republic with a string of outright lies and false promises which he could never ever keep. And he's also tried to pull at our heartstrings with the use of his 5-year-old son Bryson. He slyly told the viewers, "My biggest fear when Annie gets here is that she's all about the money and doesn't care about me and Bryson." Robert, it's too late to think about Bryson now. You've already moved a woman in without even letting him meet her first. In addition to this, you've already wound Bryson up by saying Annie's going to take care of you. So he already thinks you're going to be like my mummy. Remember episode 2 when he said, "Bryson, what are you going to say to Annie when she walks in?" He said, "Happy Mother's Day." So it's on his mind that this is going to be a replacement mother. Who has put it there? You have, Robert, in another act of unbelievable selfishness. And one of the major questions I've got for Robert is, how long did you think you could get away with making all these false promises before Annie saw you for what you really were? Well, today we have the answer. It was 1 day. Well done, Robert. And the truth be told, you exceeded my expectations. So what I plan to do in this video is to outline the 9 major lies that Robert has told to us, the viewer, and to Annie in order to get what he wants. A massive thank you to all of the people who have subscribed to my channel thus far. And now, as I near my 15,000 mark, I need anybody else who watches my videos regularly and who's yet to subscribe to press that red button for regular content. You won't be disappointed. And also don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Ebird99. And so now I'm going to present to you the 9 lies of Robert. So the first lie that he told was to Annie, and when he was courting her and wooing her online, he promised he'd get her an iPhone. Now I know a lot of people are going to think this is really not a big deal. If she hasn't got an iPhone, she hasn't got an iPhone. But imagine this, you've just moved away from all your friends, your family, all your loved ones to another country. So what would you need more than a way to contact people completely free of charge, wherever you might be or wherever they might be? Yes, you can use Skype and many other different programs, but for that regular wherever you are contact, an iPhone is going to be probably one of the best things. So Robert, why oh why would you say that you're going to buy an iPhone, and as soon as Annie gets here, you renege on the deal? I put it to you, it's because you're dishonest and devious. Lie number 2 is along the same lines. Robert assured Annie that he would buy her new clothes when she got to America, and it was on the strength of this promise that Annie decided to leave all her clothes back in the DR. So a lot of people in my comments are saying, why ever would you leave your clothes, and she's trying to gold dig. But I'll say 2 things. Firstly, she's more than likely given them to her friends and sisters and so on. She's moving to America, the land of opportunity, and she's starting a brand new life. Why wouldn't you donate your clothes to your friends and siblings? There's only so many things you can get into a 20 kg suitcase. It's exceedingly unlikely that Robert would pay for excess baggage. So ladies, imagine what it's like when we go on holiday and we're there for 2 weeks and we're living out of one suitcase. After about 6 to 8 days, you start running out of clothes, you start duplicating. So imagine that times 20. So it stands to reason that Annie was always going to need new clothes once she got to the US. Robert promised her these clothes, and upon arrival, he took her to a thrift store. Again, I know a lot of people shop at thrift stores. However, I think Robert knew very well that probably wasn't going to be right for Annie, because he managed to keep it quiet until they'd actually walked right into the store. And also his attitude when Annie tackled him about it was nothing short of disgusting. He called her ungrateful and basically insinuated that she was above herself. You think you're all that? Yes, she does, Robert, and so did you last week. Lie number 3 concerns their impending marriage. Now on the K1 visa, she has 90 days to decide whether or not to get married to Robert, and if they so decide, they need to agree on the kind of wedding they're going to have. So when Annie was still in the DR, Robert made absolutely no mention of his desire to have a very functional courthouse wedding ceremony with just a couple of witnesses. To all intents and purposes, a pauper's wedding. And I think he would have known very well that most women would want some sort of a proper wedding. It wouldn't have been so bad if he said, let's just have a courthouse wedding for now, and in 6 months' time when we've saved a bit of money, let's have a proper celebration and we'll invite your family over. Or if he'd have said, let's have a look at some budget options then and see what we can do. But no, Robert decides he's going to gaslight Annie instead. He tells her that she wants a Hollywood Hollywood wedding on Miami Beach and that her values are all wrong. His values, it seems, are quite simple. He wants her to be with him and he just wants Annie by his side in America so he's able to enjoy her company. Oh, Robert, if it was that simple, you would never have needed to make all of your outrageous agreements and commitments that you simply knew you couldn't keep. When Anna asked Robert for a proper wedding, he decided to start swearing and effing and blinding at her. What a lovely chap. Line number 4 concerns his friend Yuan. Yuan told him, be careful because if you meet these girls online, a lot of them are just looking to get to America and they just want a bit of money. And in a desperate bid to try and convince us, the viewer, and his friend Yuan that Annie had shown no propensity to want any money whatsoever, he told an outright lie to his friend and said that she'd never asked for money and that any money he'd sent himself. Random. And I think the reasons that he did this were twofold. Firstly, he wanted to try and pretend that they'd just fallen madly in love in the 8 hours that they met. And I think the second reason was so that if she ever asked for money, he could paint her as a gold digger and pretend to everybody that he'd never promised her any money or promised to help her family once she got to the States. He wanted the ability to paint himself as the victim and Annie as the aggressor. Yuan saw straight through it, and so did we. You know very well, Robert, that if you meet and propose to somebody within 8 hours, there is probably something else that they're seeking from this marriage. You know that you've gone to a very poor country where there are few opportunities and you've basically dangled a carrot in front of Annie's nose. And when Annie wants you to come good on all your promises, you attack her quite nastily. And it was quite interesting when Robert said he only wants a ceremony and he's not going to let his friends and family eat and drink off of him. You can see that Robert will spend money, but only on himself. He's uniquely selfish. When he needed to, he managed to get a cruise for himself all the way to the DR to go and see Annie, but when it comes to potentially somebody else managing to get something from him, he's really not interested. Line number 5 is that he hasn't bothered to tell Annie of the dire financial predicament he's been in for many years. He's faced eviction orders at least 5 times in the last 5 or 6 years. In 2014, Robert was named in an eviction filing at an apartment complex in which he was living. And just prior to this, in 2012, according to court records, Robert was named in 3 different eviction proceedings. He managed to settle the 2 and remained in his apartment, but on the 3rd one, Robert was unfortunately evicted. Now, I make little judgment on the fact that he experienced financial difficulties. It can pretty much happen to anyone at any point. A short bout of illness can see a lot of people plunge below the poverty line, and the only problem I have with it in this instance is that he hasn't been upfront to Annie. So he's indicated that he can take care of her and that he can buy her things and they can get married. He's been on a cruise to see her. He's going to buy her a wedding ring. All of this implicitly says, I'm of good financial standing. Hey, I have spare money. But in actual fact, he's scrimping and scraping to get Annie over there so he can have free childcare and someone he thinks won't have any other options. And I believe if he was completely honest with Annie about his financial situation, the whole thing might have been off, which might have been better for everybody, including Bryson, because Robert could have set about finding somebody who was happy to move to America and struggle just as much as they were in the Dominican Republic. And so line number 6 is very closely related to that. He intimated he could look after Annie, and I've actually got a feeling that Anna's going to be far poorer in the US than she ever was in the DR. Robert tells us Annie's going to be looking after Bryson and parenting him, and we all know if he had to pay for childcare, it would be exceedingly expensive, probably even more expensive than moving somebody from the DR. So whilst Robert's out working and earning a crust, Annie will be at home not earning anything. And as we've seen already, Robert isn't the most lavish with his earnings, and the overwhelming chances are Anna won't have any actual spare cash of her own. She'll have to go cap in hand to Robert each time she needs to buy something. And again, I find this a clear misrepresentation of what life was going to be like in America. Don't get me wrong, I know that Annie has got designs on spending as much of his money as she possibly can, but I also think that it's highly likely she's got no idea how much Chanel and Versace dresses actually are. So she's sitting in the DR looking at the TV and thinking that's within the grasp of most normal people. But as we all know, it really isn't. Robert needed to actually set that all straight. I can't afford to buy you new clothes. I'll buy you second-hand clothes. I'll give you no phone whatsoever. We won't have any sort of wedding other than a perfunctory paperwork ceremony. Had he said any of those things, we wouldn't be seeing Annie on our screens today. But it's line number 7 that's the the absolute doozy. So we've heard Robert consistently say that Bryson's the most important thing in his life, and it's just him and Bryson now, and all the work he does for Bryson. Well, it transpired earlier today that Robert has not one, not two, not three, but 4 other children. So he basically has 5 children by 4 different women. So looking at social media, Robert seems to have a son and daughter who are a bit older than Bryson, but still school aged. And the last photos on social media of these 2 kids with Robert are in December of 2016. However, according to court records, the child's mother filed for child support on May the 11th, 2015. Robert failed to pay, and on April the 8th, 2016, a final judgment on petition for enforcement of administrative order was filed in a desperate bid to get Robert to pay for these children. And it's not known how old the 2 other children are. It could well be that they're adults, but as of the recording date of this video, he has at least 3 children of school age and 3 children for which he's financially responsible. So there are several reasons why this is going to be an issue for Anny. First up, obviously nobody likes to be lied to, and nobody likes the idea that somebody isn't disclosing something as serious as other children. Secondly, he obviously shows a propensity to impregnate women and then go on his merry way. If they're all for one mum or 2 mums, I would understand a bit more, but they're from 4 different women, 5 kids by 4. And if I were Anny, I'd be thinking, there's no saying that me getting married to this person and having a child means that he's going to be around for any decent amount of time. Also, Anny was saying at the airport that she would like to have a family with Robert as well, and although she said she considers Bryson her own, I don't know how at that point because she'd only met him for 5 minutes, but anyway, she obviously also wants to have biological children of her own as well, but that would be an issue because financially it would be very difficult for Robert to be able to afford 2 or 3 kids that Anny might want, and Robert has the gall to say he has red flags with Anny. Really? And then there's the issue of those other kids. So they're slightly older than Bryson, but obviously they're going to be sitting at home watching Robert play happy families with Bryson, and I'd wager it's probably not a nice feeling for those other kids. And also, whilst shirking his responsibilities regarding payments for child maintenance, he's busy paying for Anny's K1 visa, the cost of which is just over $2,000. And line number 8 is concerning Robert's ex and the mother of Bryson. Robert tells us that he doesn't know why his ex left, and that she left in the middle of the night, took everything with her, and he's never seen her again. He has no clue whatsoever why she'd leave. And whilst I think it's absolutely disgusting that she left Bryson, if indeed she did leave Bryson in that manner, there's more to this story than meets the eye. So on June the 6th, 2016, a domestic violence with childcare case was filed, with Robert as the petitioner and Bryson's mother as the respondent. And later, in November 2016, Bryson's mum was arrested for domestic battery, and here is an excerpt from the police statement from the arresting officer at the time. The officer said he went to Robert's home in reference to a domestic battery. Upon arriving, he was told by Robert that Bryson's mum and he had got into an argument about her not being allowed into his bedroom. Bryson's mum got upset and barged into his room and started pushing him. Robert stated he tried to grab her and restrain her, but she continued to try and push him. She then began to grab random items from the house and throw them around, making a mess. The arresting officer said he didn't notice any injuries on Robert at all, but Bryson's mum refused to speak with him, and then in the middle of an open living room, she deliberately charged into the officer. She was then placed into a police vehicle and placed under arrest for domestic battery and battery on a law enforcement officer. So who knows exactly what happened here, but I think it's fair to suggest that Robert saying, "I have no idea why she'd just walk out," was stretching the truth just a tad. It seems as if they had a very tumultuous and argumentative relationship, so much so the police were called and had to become involved. And it's just another instance of Robert omitting details or stretching the truth. And the final lie, number 9, is Robert's own tick sheet. Robert's been arrested several times, mainly for driving offences, and he was arrested twice in 2012 for driving with a suspended licence. Adding to that his eviction orders and drama with Bryson's mother, a picture begins to build that Robert doesn't seem to be in full control of his life and financial dealings. But given Robert's past attitude, I have every reason to believe that all these problems will always have been somebody else's fault and beyond his control. Robert, who told his friend Yuan, "I speak to her for an hour on the phone every night," has managed to speak for months and months to this girl and not told her the most salient points about his life and the issues on which judgments about whether you want to be with someone or in a relationship with someone are made. So guys, tell me what you think. Would you be unhappy if you found out out your guy had 5 kids by 4 different women? Or do you think it's par for the course these days and no big deal, and if you wanted to know you should have asked? And what do you think happened with Robert's ex? Do you believe him that he's got no idea why she just disappeared? Or do you think he knows very well but just doesn't want to disclose? I think that Robert's a real box of tricks, and if I were Annie, I'd be booking my return ticket back home. I think he's unpredictable, I think he's manipulative, and I think she's going to be extremely unhappy during her time with Robert. But Annie's an adult and she should have thought about that before agreeing to marry someone in a ringless proposal on the beach in DR after just 8 hours of meeting, especially when that person had the face of an imbecile. However, the real victim in all of this is little Bryson. He's going to get an attachment to Annie, and Robert knows very well that once all of these secrets start to come out, the chances of Annie sticking around long term, because we're not just talking about the 90 days, we're talking about years and years, the chances of her sticking around for years are very slim. He needs to find someone that's preferably from the US, date them properly, get to know each other, be honest about his background, everybody has a past, even me, and see if he can work on an honest and real relationship. And in the meantime, Robert, you'll just have to pay for childcare. I'd love to know what you guys think, so put your comments down below and I'll answer as many as I can. If you haven't already, please don't forget to press the red button, subscribe. I'll be doing specials each week, so you don't want to miss any of these videos. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Ebird Online. Ciao for now.